don't we kick it off? Again, thanks everybody for joining. I see people rolling in. We'll kind of spend the next couple of minutes just making sure that everybody comes in. But again, thank you for doing this. We've been trying to do it every Wednesday for Wisdom Wednesdays for Betamore. Our goal is always to bring in people that can kind of add value to not only entrepreneurs but also our community at large, and making sure that we have an open, honest dialogue around all the things that we're dealing with. And the two individuals with us today from Fearless, they've certainly been great voices, great leaders, and people in our community that I think we have a lot of respect for. So we have Delali and we have John with us, both from Fearless. I will let you guys introduce yourself, but again, thank you guys for being here, taking the time, and having this conversation with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep, thanks.
Awesome. So we're going to go live on Facebook as well. So for those of you that are here on Zoom, you have the opportunity. You can actually send a chat message to us. We'll answer any questions throughout. We'll keep an eye on that. And again, thank you for those that are joining through Zoom. But if you're on Facebook, same thing goes. We'll be watching for comments and questions and things that we want to do there. But Delali, if I can have you, kind of kick us off a little bit here, give a little bit of your background. I always love your personal story and how you and Greg met as well, going back to UMBC.
Just thinking about that.
Yeah. But, you founded, Fearless, and it's one of those organizations that I think a lot of people here in Baltimore probably have heard in some capacity what you've been doing, but your rise and the growth and trajectory of that organization that you've built has been phenomenal and a very cool Baltimore story.
Very cool. Thanks again for having me. So it's funny, you talk about our UMBC days. Greg, I don't think we overlapped. I mean, Greg was one of those kind of distant stars, I think, back in your Blue Sky Factory days, as he was kind of running that and getting that going up. So I met Greg actually when I was a student at UMBC.
You were a senior? I don't know if it was a senior, but I remember I was coming in as a speaker, one of the entrepreneurial
Yeah,
classes.
I think so.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so actually the same time I met John. So I met John in undergrad as well, but studied computer engineering here locally at UMBC. So was always pretty interested in the technology side. Also, while I was there, they launched an entrepreneurship program where I met Greg and a lot of really great entrepreneurs and advisors that really poured in all the students there. And so, like, I kind of connected the dots, right? I felt like growing up, I had a lot of the hustle. We went, door to door, knocking on doors to cut grass and wash cars and walk dogs and you name it. But some of the formal, how do you create a business plan? How do you think about marketing, right? All those things, learned a little bit more at UMBC. So, you fast forward, graduated from UMBC, started working for a small defense contractor. And I remember going into that company day one and letting him know that I wanted to start a company. I didn't know what it looked like, and I didn't know when, but I wanted to come and pick his brain and to learn, and got just a great opportunity at that organization. And they kept their end of the bargain. So I built technology kind of by day, off hours. I could pick their brain, and they would give me, insight and just business direction and a lot of really great mentors along the way. Fast forward again, company gets acquired. Did a tour of 2 other small companies, and then really Fearless was born as a result. Really looking at the marketplace and really trying to understand, specifically within the public sector, how do we do better, right? So a lot of people building some really cool stuff, but things that we're finding, people, a lot of fraud, a lot of abuse, waste, a lot of, people building things that weren't really solving the actual problem. And so we really want to take a human-centered design to how we approach technology. And so Fearless is really born. Our mission is to build software with a soul. We are a digital services firm. And our vision is to see a world where good software powers things that matter. And so the same tech that you see when you order something on Amazon and something shows up in your door an hour later because they've got all sorts of cool predictive modeling, or you click a button and an Uber shows up, should be the same, amazing tech that powers, healthcare, the same amazing tech that powers education, and all these things that are so impactful to us. And so Fearless, that's our mission, and that's why we're here.
I love that term though, software with a soul. I mean, I'm a marketer, and that's like one of those things where it's like that tagline for you guys. It's one that I adore, but I mean, you live it, you breathe it. And I think that's the other part of like looking at your fearless kind of brand is that, I mean, you not only, you know, can own it, but at the same point, like it's so authentic that, you know, it's there. But what I also love is like looking at everything else brand related too. So that like, you know, you wearing your shirt, but it's like you guys just live it, breathe it. Your culture just like oozes with, you know, that whole software of the soul. So I think that's, you know, phenomenal. And even, you know, looking at your extensions of things that you're doing too, like the Hack Baltimore and, you know, some of your community initiatives too. It's just all those extension points, you can tell that you're doing it for all the right reasons, but it's not, you know, it's just not, you know, lip service, right? Like you truly, you know, do it.
But before we talk about some of that stuff, because I think it's all very interesting, and I want to get into all of it, but I don't want to have the fearless moment go by here without, you know, really talking about what you guys have accomplished, which is really, you know, going back from the days of the UMBC when I remember you going, yeah, I'm going to start a company. I'm going to start a company in that exact class that I was speaking at. Not only have you started a company, you've scaled a company, which is, we'll get into that later too, but just for the people watching and who are going to watch this, let's talk about some of the stuff that you can talk about that you guys power from a technology standpoint. I mean, this is major deployment, major.
John, why don't I let you feel that one?
Yeah, John.
Yeah. So real quick, I wanted to go back to something that was said, and I will answer the question.
Sure.
One thing that I would say just about knowing Delali is that, yes, he's always had the vision of, you know, making a dent in the world, right? So for those people who are maybe listless in the world, right? Find that leader that has that strong vision and latch on, right? And when you do, you know, great things happen. And so just, you know, want to applaud Delali for just, you know, sticking to, you know, our core values and making sure those values propagate to all things that Fearless has done. And to kind of, you know, ride that wave a little bit. Some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, we support customers at the federal, state, and local level, right? On the federal side, we've been able to be plugged into working with the Small Business Administration, right? And we're in the midst of COVID, right? And then we're in the midst of, you know, Congress rolling out the PPP program, right? And you know, the SBA came to us and said, hey, how can you help us get to small businesses and support banks that support those small businesses in a way that's very streamlined, very low barrier of entry for those banks, right? So we were able to, in the midst of 7 days, stand up a portal that connected, you know, businesses that didn't have access to SBA loans very quickly. So those small businesses could stay afloat in the midst of PPP. We've been able to support some very strategic vision and direction programs for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, right? So, you know, in the midst of you know, legacy systems, in the midst of what we're trying to do from a digital transformation perspective, take these old legacy systems, these mainframe systems, and bring them to the, you know, the 21st century, right? And do it in a way that is impactful to end users, the people who really, you know, need to benefit from the changes that the Medicare and Medicaid programs are founded on, right? Is another great thing. And then lastly, that's at the federal level, just a few examples. And then maybe at the city level, right? We've been able to, you know, work with the health department to do things like stand up dashboards for, well, Dolly, I'll let you talk about some of those things, because you're really passionate about that.
Yeah. So at the local level, we've had a couple cool projects, and it all actually started with a few years ago, us supporting Tech Health, which was an initiative out of the health department under their CIO Mike Freed, which really wanted to connect technologists in the city to, you know, bring them to the health department to solve challenges. And so we were able to support them in creating a early warning dashboard. So they wanted to track the opioid epidemic and spikes in overdoses across the city and other fatalities. And so we're able to build a tool, it's a pretty quick prototype in, I think it's 7 or 8 weeks to get them kind of going and get some data in that environment. Another really cool project that we've supported, and lots in the health space, was around accountable healthcare communities. And so the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, they looked at a number of jurisdictions across the country, and they wanted to find a better way to do social needs screening. So if I go to a hospital, I go to a particular provider, and I have other social determinants of health, right? So I may not have access to food. I may not have access to financial support. I may a host of other issues. They wanted kind of a universal way to screen that and share and collaborate in a more collaborative way across the entire health system here within Baltimore. And so we were able to build a service that a tool that was able to get that off the ground with the health department as well. So when someone goes in for a social media screening, they're able to capture that data and do a bit of the case management and connect them to resources in near real time. And so that's been a really cool engagement there. And this is John. This time we get to rattle about all the amazing things that the folks at Fearless are doing. So I'll rattle off a couple more. He talked about the PVP program. And in fact, our teams support and manage the entire face of the Small Business Administration. So SBA.gov is one of them. So we power that site. And so a lot of great engineers supporting not just what you see, but we've got teams that support the infrastructure for SBA. So how do you then take applications from on-prem into the cloud and help them to scale so that when things like a pandemic or other situations may hit and everyone starts flooding a site, right, the thing doesn't go down, right? So a lot of things you tend to take for granted. We also power login.gov, which is the single sign-on provider for the federal government. So if you've registered for a number of third-party services, or when we could travel again, global entry, or any of these kind of things where you've got to get an online credential, we manage and run that program. And so really bright team working on that. Search.gov, the federal government search engine, we power that as well, supporting the General Services Administration. We have four, and the fourth .gov that we manage is challenge.gov. So the innovation portal for the federal government, but it spans much larger than that. We've got teams that are really driving, reimagining what Medicare looks like across the country. We've got teams. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I add one thing here?
Yeah.
I think Delali, and John, we have to redo the tagline. It's mission critical software with the soul. Mission critical software with the soul. This stuff is, considering what we're in right now. You guys are the backbone of a lot of it, infrastructure, a lot of it, and adding solutions to the problems that came out of it. And so it's I didn't mean to cut you off, but everything sounds critically mission critical stuff.
Yeah, and I could rattle on forever. I don't want to leave any of the teams out, but it spans from Medicare to Medicaid that people are looking at reimagining, to helping the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid rethink human-centered design and service design, and how they connect services within there to make quality healthcare more affordable across the board. And so that's been really exciting. We've got teams that are supporting DoD and specifically within Air Force that are looking to figure out how to enable our airmen to be mobile developers and to do that more efficiently and build more effective business applications. And think about all these things that are really common to, let's say, technologies that are in the commercial space, where let's use modern technology, let's leverage the cloud, let's do good design, all of these things. There's often a big gap within government, and so we've been able to help enable that whole organization and how they shift in. I know every day we just come to work so excited about all the bright and amazing things that everyone across the team is working on.
And it's super cool. I didn't actually know a lot of those. I think that's the thing, is we've talked many times, but I'm learning even more of the fabric of what you're doing for the country is incredible.
And to support all those things, and from the time knowing you, from when you're I'm going to start a company, give everybody an idea of the size of Fearless today. Because I think with last time you came and visited Damien and I at Betamore, we were sitting down and I knew it was a lot, but I had no idea the scale.
Yeah, from an employee perspective, we're about a little under 120 employees. We do try to partner and subcontract a good portion of our work, because we think it's really important to grow a vendor and an industry base. And so there's about 80, John, was it 70 or 80 partners that we also support. So all in, probably about 200 FTEs through Fearless.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats on that, obviously, to both of you guys. And I know scaling an organization, and John, this probably better than, growing an organization that big. Nothing is constant but change, right? And we're learning that in life, as being reinforced once again, that it's the only constant, but especially scaling an organization.
Yeah.
It is.
One set of challenges for the next, right?
Right.
It is. And what we've learned over the years is one, be crystal clear on your mission, right?
Yep.
But also be crystal clear on your values, right? And so to point about like how do we stem the constant changes that occur in the company, right? We always go back to the values. So one thing that we started doing recently is, and we just did it this morning, right? We had 2 new employees start this morning, and the very first thing that they experienced in the company was talking to Delali and I, not around like, how do you do your time card? What are the values of the company, right? And how do we, what behaviors should we expect in you and your roles, right? That translates into wins for our customers and for Fearless through those values. And if I, us continuing to do that, we continue to see the goodness that comes in the company.
And I think when you say, what you said, when people understand the values coming in and there's that upfront agreement of expectations, and you have a leader with a clear vision like Delali, the culture just kind of falls in line, or is a lot. There's a framework around the culture. It's intended, the intention behind that.
But I love the standards you guys set on that too, though, right? Because this is something you've been doing since day one, which is like Delali, you always take the time to meet with that person one-on-one when they first start, they onboard, you make sure that you kind of give them like, hey, here's my vision. But I mean, some of the other things that I've heard from your team too, is it's also that onboarding and kind of like you showing, look, I'm very open to having a dialogue from day one about like, how do we grow together? I think is also really, important too. And you don't see that. I mean, that's a rare thing, for leaders, especially I think when we met with you, Greg, to that point, when we met at Betamore about a year ago, I think you had 80 employees, I want to say.
Yeah, I think it was.
Now, I think, that growth path, and even, in this moment in time where you're still growing, during COVID, I think is also, super impressive. There's actually a question that comes from another UMBC member, if you will, or alum, Michael from Mindstand, who's also been a great, voice from UMBC. He's asking you guys, how do you utilize the UMBC BW Tech community to grow Fearless? And was it a slow process? Which I think is an awesome question as well.
That's a great one.
Yeah. So so we actually started off in an incubator at UMBC, the cybersecurity incubator, and learned a lot. I mean, so that was our first official out of the home office space. I remember we had 1 cubicle, and that was kind of the starting point, and we started to scale from there. But I think BW Tech and many incubators, my perspective is you get out what you put in. And so if you want to use it as just office space and a place to hang your hat and come in when you come into your work and leave, that's the value that you get out of it. For us, like we leaned in pretty heavily, and we were pretty, we weren't shy about asking for help. Like there's so much we didn't know. We're still learning a lot today. And so we were pretty good about raising our hands saying we need help with, we understand marketing, and we took advantage of the entrepreneur in residence, like office hours, and we'd go ping them and ask questions, and the rest of the team, the staff, and he make introductions to this company or this company. And so I think the support was extremely valuable, but we certainly invested in it. John, I don't know if you got anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, I would say outside of the incubator itself, right? Like what we intentionally did was try to connect the incubator back to the school itself, right? And so we were able to pull in some interns that now work for us full time. That Delali got an email message, private email message from one of our government customers the other day that said, "I am so happy that we took the time to invest in your interns because now they are delivering real value on our projects today." And that's been a matter of 2 or 3 years since this person moved from intern to full employment, right? So I think just being very intentional about understanding the broader context, right, around the incubator allowed us to be successful in that regard.
Sure. And I think those incubators, I mean, and again, obviously with Betamore, we want to make sure that we're not just a space, we're not just a place to go, that you really have the value that you can kind of get through not only the connections, but the advice and the opportunity to grow together. Because I think that's the thing that always happened, naturally. And obviously we've been challenged with how do we, still use that network in the same way at this, moment in time too. And that's where like these sort of dialogues, I think are super important to figure out, like, how are we all growing together, even though we can't be together? Because that is, a certain challenge that, the incubators, like every single one that we talked to. And we talked to a lot of them, at this point. And you've been, in and out of those, and you've had, even your office space, now I have to imagine, is not getting that same usage, but you had, connective tissue into other incubators after BW Tech, right? But we're all trying to figure out what that looks like. And I don't think anybody has the answer. We're all learning together on that, but the togetherness, if you will, I think is what's been really important, and where, we can all kind of rise above by saying like, what do you need help with? And I think that's really the key, is the humility in that, like, we don't have the answers in trying to, reach out to each other and saying like, how can we help each other? I think is really key. And while you wear that fearless pride of like, we fear nothing, right? But I think what I love about both of you guys is that you still are very open, saying, look, we don't have the answer, right now. So, which brings me kind of to the next question, which is, what are you guys, really most challenged with right now at this moment in time, as, we are, not together, but we're trying to rise and thrive and still operate, businesses. And especially in your case, like, if there is a word essential, I mean, I think that label for you guys is you are essential to the country right now. And I think that's something, that I'm proud to say that you guys are part of our community. But what are you dealing with right now? Like, what are some of those big challenges that are kind of your biggest challenges?
Yeah, so good question. I think, so I'll answer from my vantage point, right? And a lot of how we've split kind of our roles between John and I is I kind of drive a lot of the strategic direction, like where do we need to go in the next couple of years. And then John does much of the daily execution of what that means today, right? How do we need to execute? How do we need to deal with the issues of today? And so from my vantage point, like what I think about is really what does the future hold, right? For in general, as it relates to technology and in our space in particular. I think about the future of our office space, like, and how is that going to be impacted, right? And I think there'll be a slow return, but it's nowhere close, right? But we've kind of pressed forward and continued with our expansion from that. I think the challenges that I think through is, much of our customer base is the federal government. And DC seems to be cutting, $1 trillion checks every other day right now. And so, you got to imagine at some point you got to balance a budget, right? At some point they got to cut something. And so staying ahead of like, what could that mean for us and for our business long-term, I think is important. And I think the last one is that I really think about, challenges now are kind of what are the trends that we see in the market in general, right? Where do we need to pick up like new capabilities? I'd say, 6-7 years ago, it was a really hot trend, like, oh, you guys do agile work and you're doing DevOps and cloud. And so there wasn't enough of those, right? Now, everyone that's doing stuff in this space can do that, right? So what's next, right? What's coming next, and how do we kind of stay ahead of that? And so we're starting to think through like how we do that and how we make this shift within our organization now, so that we're prepared for that, 2-3 years from now.
John, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything Delali said. I think for me, it's a constant struggle internally to balance like the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs versus our ability to like really deliver true value for our customers, right? And so I constantly am having conversations and working to get alignment around. I understand that we are in a space of have to take care of myself, right? Have to take care of our employees, right? And how do you balance having those conversations and doing the things and spending the dollars to make sure that people are taken care of, but also having to reorient them in a direction that yes, that is a concern, but our customers also need our help as well. And just balancing that constantly is driving towards, outcomes, for the company is the one thing that we're working through.
Classic operations, healthy rub, right?
Yep.
It's a friction, but it's a good one because it's clearly, correlates directly to your values of the company, right? And like that friction's always been there. And anytime I always find that with companies that are in growth mode, like you guys are, growth creates a variety of healthy frictions that take place in an organization. So.
Yeah,
Delali, I didn't cut you off. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I think one more thing that we've been kind of thinking through as a company, right? A lot of what we've just mentioned are just COVID related items. There's so much like centered around, the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happening from just a racial justice and civil unrest type conversation. And so for us, we're not immune to it, right? People might see and say, oh, you've got a black founder, therefore, you may not have issues and it's smooth sailing, but it very much so is an intentional process for us that we're learning. We're learning as well. Like, how do we have, some of these tough conversations in house? What should our response be as a company, and how do we lean in? What do we do outside of a statement, and how do we ensure that there's like long-term systemic change, like even within our organization? And I think what we're challenged with now is we're starting to something that actually John did that I thought was really cool was there's so many different personality types, right, as it relates to this conversation, right? There are people that are completely drained with the thought of this conversation at all, and like, don't ask me any questions, right? I don't want to field any questions. I don't want to talk to anybody. It's time for action, right? And that's fine. I think that's a reasonable space to be in. Something I was really impressed that John did was John posted a note on LinkedIn and said, "Here's an open invitation. Anyone in the world that wants to talk to me, to have a conversation about race, I'm happy to have that conversation." Say, here's my link, schedule it. Here's my link to my calendar, schedule a meeting, and let's just talk. And just kind of learning from his example of like just being available to field some of those questions and, just making yourself available. There's so many people that are like, hey, we think we want to do better. We don't even know how. We don't even know how to have the conversation. We don't know how to start. We don't know what to do. And I think for us, like, we can provide, a resource to especially other tech companies in this space of how to navigate some of these conversations and to hopefully start to get on the other end of this and start talking through solutions.
Sure. And I think that open and honest dialogue right now is super important. And it's not just also about employees, but it's also arming your employees with the ability to actually, kind of bring even like their children to the table, right? And saying like, look, we need to talk about that as well. And I think that's been an interesting kind of notion that we're all grappling with also, is like, how do you talk about it, but also where do you start? And like, John, like, you just opening yourself up to the world and saying like, let's just talk, right? Like, I think that's commendable as well. And
how did that go? I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure it's probably ongoing, but I mean, or I don't know if you did a block of time, but I'm curious to wonder how the response was to just putting yourself out there and saying, let's have the conversation.
Yeah, it's been highly fascinating, highly educating to me, right? Just the different perspectives of folks. It is ongoing. I think the schedule is like blocked for the next two or three months, right? So very excited to continue.
Wow.
And the thing that I'm learning is that people have opinions, right? Rightfully so. They're just scared to like voice them publicly, right? And so what we tend to do is assume that we know people, right?
Yeah.
And this is just an opportunity for people to have the freedom, the comfort to have the open conversations. And what's led to is some education on my end, some education on their end. And we continue to have those conversations outside of the blocks that I've set up. So, and I think that's how you make real systemic change, right?
Yep.
For sure. Yeah.
That's incredible.
No, and I mean, we're all learning on this, and it's interesting. It's like I'm married to a Black woman. I have biracial kids, and it's one where it's like having those dialogues right now with my 6-year-old he's thirsting for knowledge because he's not in school, right? But now it's like this moment in time where it's like, all right, we're going to teach you some other things, and we're actually going to learn together, and it's even like we're going down that rabbit hole on John Lewis, who is just one of those leaders where it's like, cause some good trouble, right? And I think that's the thing. It's like, I love that motto too, that he lived it every day. I mean, for so long. And like, I'm learning more about him. I always knew a little bit about him, but it's one of those that, like, seeing it through the eyes of a 6-year-old who is, a biracial, kid, like it's interesting because like, there's just things I didn't appreciate in learning, this previously to this point. And, my wife and she's a lawyer. She's a legal aid lawyer. She does housing rights law in DC. And I'm super proud of everything she's doing. But you talk about systemic change and how do we create that? DC and Baltimore are kind of grappling with how do you change, right now. And that change is hard, but we've got to start somewhere. So I think it's a super important topic. As you guys are looking at, and I'm going to kind of bring it back again to Fearless, because as you're looking at your company culture and how you recruit and hire and make sure that you're checking, people's kind of DNA, how do you deal with that even right now? Like, because there's you just brought on 2 new people today, right? Like, how do you search for those people to make sure that they match your values, at this point? And then also as they're being onboarded and, just like we're talking about kind of the change of our culture, how do you also make sure that you have check-ins with them going forward and saying like, here, we want to hear from you. We want to see how you feel. What does that look like for you right now?
John, you want to grab that?
Yeah. So I think a couple things, right? I think the way about interviewing folks is like threefold, right? So we certainly do, for a majority of folks, technical and just general business fit screenings. But what we've what we've always done is we inject this idea of a cultural screening, right? And being crystal clear with folks up front around these are our values, these are the behaviors that we expect in our values, and asking very directed questions up front in the interview process that lets us know, do you align to those values, right? And I would say it's not that much different than the initial conversation that Delali and I had, when I came on board, right, with him, right? How do you find those alignments up front to your point around the onboarding, make that onboarding experience that much more rich and fulfilling, because you don't have to necessarily worry so much around those values alignments, right? And as far as the onboarding process goes, we are now starting to implement more of this idea of what I want to call a holistic or 360 approach to Fearless, right? So once again, the very first thing that we do is we onboard people to our values, but then also we're trying to expose them more to all the other things that happen at Fearless. And we do it in the way of trying to tell stories, right? Don't onboard them to process, but teach them through, hey, if you look at this example of this program, if you look at this department in Fearless, here's how they've been able to be successful. And if you do it through the lens of storytelling, I think people tend to latch on a lot better than just following some checklist for onboarding. So those are just some examples of things that we've done.
I couldn't agree more. The narrative, telling the narrative that in a way people can understand it, is so much more effective than forms and procedures.
Yeah.
I'd say another piece to add to that. John spoke about the values. And interestingly enough, we had an Ask Me Anything session, and we had someone asked the question, said, hey, the fact that we have, there's studies obviously, cultural screenings, and are they good, are they bad, they reinforce bias, and how do we kind of think about that as an organization? I said, really, I think for us, it depends on what the values are that you're trying to enforce in the cultural screen, right? For ours, our number one thing is create belonging, right? And it's how do we create this space where everyone feels like they're part of the team and valued part of the team, right? I think is a big one. And it sounds easy. It is one of the hardest things to do. One, to get comfortable in your own skin, but then two, how do you make a space for someone else and respect their opinion and what they bring to the table? And we had some conversations around despite the fact that it's, wear what you want, right? Be comfortable. And, everyone kind of, trying to get everyone, whoever they are, people still wear a mask, right? How we are at work many times isn't how we are around our friends and our loved ones and everything else. And so for us, it is an ongoing process. How do we close that gap, right? How do we close that gap where that person knows that we see them and we see them for who they are, and that we want that person at that table, right? And to bring all their insights and their thoughts and perspectives and background to the table, because that creates a better culture, right? A better company and a better product in the long haul. And so for us, not now, but coming in our office any day, it wouldn't be outlandish to see kids running around, right? Every day is bring your kid to work day, right? We've got spaces dedicated for that because those people are important. to our folks, right? And so they're important to us, right? And so that's an extension of our Fearless family. You have animals, pets, I mean, you name it. It's just a common part of our culture. But again, we work really hard to try to figure out how we can continue to close that gap, to get the masks off and make sure everyone's comfortable. They feel like they can be themselves and do their best work.
Really interesting. When you think about that, it's really trying to, it's like bring you to work, your whole self, and not just the work you, and getting rid of the duality of, like you said, the masks that people wear when they enter the workplace,
Bring you to work day. I'm still in that, Greg.
Bring you to work day. I like it. There you go.
So we actually have another great question.
True. We got another question. Cool.
Yeah, so in response to conversations around social equity, how do you strike a balance around communicating to both the disadvantaged and privileged employees, which I think is an interesting, dialogue there.
Yeah, I don't think the conversation is different, right? We try to base the conversation in facts, right? There are historical facts, right, and conditions that have happened, right? Policies that have happened that have helped to create conditions that exist today, right? And so one, it's communicating those facts, right, which aren't, based on necessarily interpretations, like these things happen, right? And let's kind of ground ourselves in facts, I think, starting off the conversation. But also we spoke about, creating belonging is the first value. The second one is open dialogue. And that means everyone has a perspective that they can and should share, right? It does not mean during the all hands, let's just hear from all the Black people in the company, right? And everyone else just take notes, right? And there is an important part of elevating voices in the conversation that often feel like they're left out of the conversation. But it also does mean, like, how do we have a back and forth dialogue, right? Both listening and observing and asking questions. So for us, like, we didn't treat those as separate. We treated it as one conversation and an ongoing dialogue. And then, groups of folks have been able to self-organize into what they care about. We found that there's typically like 3 groups of people. There are the folks that they just want to learn more, right? Okay, where can I go and like more? Give me some books, give me some movies I want to read and just kind of study, right? Then there are the folks that just want action, right? Like, what are we gonna do? Like, talk is cheap. Like, what are we doing? How are we gonna change? Like, how are we gonna play? And I think the next group is like, I want to kind of keep talking about it. Like, where do I go to? Where can I go? What's a safe place for me to continue to ask questions? And so for us, like, we didn't get this completely right the first time. We ended up taking notes and writing a playbook about this that we posted on our website, which is like how to have this conversation and to give space for all those 3 camps, right? And those 3 camps aren't necessarily based on, necessarily the color, but it's based on the perspective of what they're looking for, what they need, and meeting them where they are.
I love that.
Awesome.
And I like that you put it on the website too, that you're putting it out there for the world. And I think that's, again, it just shows how fearless you are, right? Let's pivot.
We'll put that link in the comments too.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Again, commend you for doing that as well. I mean, that's exactly that.
It's huge. Can we talk a little bit about Hack Baltimore? And it's one of those, platforms that, again, I love, that you're driving, and it's like you got it out there. It's been out there for quite a while now, right? Almost 2 years, roughly. If I, correct me if I'm wrong. But what are you doing with that right now? And also, kind of how are you trying to bring people to the table to help with that as well?
Yeah, Hack Baltimore has been such a beautiful story and such an amazing ride of ups and downs and craziness. And so the story starts with how do we rethink this concept of a hackathon that's really good, that gets energy in a room over the course of a weekend, solving problems. That part is amazing, right? The part that I think is not so amazing, right? Kind of how we looked at it was within Fearless was, come Monday morning, so many of those projects will die, right? People go back to school, they go back to work, and fun weekend ends with a couple checks, and then the projects fizzle out. So how can we create a space where we're thinking about sustainability up front? Like, if we're gonna fix them, like, let's keep them fixed, right? And in order to do that, we felt like we had to get further up the stack, right? Which meant, like, we've got to have like more conversations about like design. In any of our organizations, if someone came to us and say, I'm here to sell you a widget, I'm like, okay, cool, but it's got to integrate with my timekeeping system. It's got to integrate with this. We have like real requirements of like, we can't use it if it doesn't do these things. And so we often do that in our professional life within Fearless in our organizations. When it comes to community projects, it's like, let's throw some volunteers and let's hope that it works out. And so we've been able to, you know, with an awesome team, Dion's been supporting me, and Laura, who's been driving a lot of our framing, is like, how do we think about that from a community lens? Galvanizing a city around bring your challenge to the table, because challenges that are here can be solved. We believe that. And there's a bunch more people that want to fix them. Let's just connect the dots a little bit better. So this started off with us getting like the city all excited about this and like, yeah, we're on board, we want to do it. And then the mayoral scandal hits, and then it's like, all right, well, yeah, we'll get to that a little later. So all right, so we got to pivot and figure out how to navigate that. And they said, all right, start working with the IT organization within the city we sit. So we do. And we start moving there, and we get the momentum back, and we're rolling, we're stoked, right? And then the city gets hit by ransomware. And like, yeah, well, we'll get back to that. So this is our third iteration, and now we're in a pandemic. So this is going to be quite a story one day.
Yes, it will.
but no, it's been so exciting to imagine what has gone from like a weekend showcase and thinking about sustainability to more of like a movement in an organization around solving challenges. And so the problem that we're trying to solve at Hack Baltimore isn't like, can we fix a thing? It's, can we create a framework where challenges continually come in? We can figure out who from the community needs to be at the table, because they're often not at the table, right? It's just like tech folks or business folks trying to enforce, you know, a solution on someone. Get everyone at the table, design it together, build it together, and figure out how to sustain it together. And that's really the problem that we're trying to solve from end to end. So it's been super exciting to kind of imagine that. And
sort of to like, you know, just to kind of encapsulate it a little bit more, the conversations that we've had and continue to have, and the ones that we've had with Mike as well from the health department. I mean, this whole concept of Hack Baltimore and the kind of platform, the kind of technologies and framework that you're talking about, really you could put like the civic technology kind of title to, if you will. Like, how do we really create a framework for pulling in the feedback, creating the solutions to the problems that exist, deploying them in, and, you know, creating iterations and tweaks based on the ever-changing environment. Again, there's that constant change, you know, and
yeah,
that's really like, when you say that was kind of like the umbrella that you were looking at it.
Absolutely, right. I think so. You go back to the vision we talked about, a world where good software powers things that matter, right? We believe that in our DNA, whether it's in Fearless or not, right? And so everything we touch is going to have kind of that lens. So we do that in Fearless. We do that as we're incubating new companies, and that's their view of the world, right? We're doing it in the community, in the city with Hack Baltimore, but it's all the same in our head. It's the same thing, right? There are different implementations of that, but ultimately it is the civic tech movement. And how do we get tech to really power and serve society better than it has before?
What I also like that you guys are doing too is that you're educating people on the human-centered design approach, right? Because good technology really doesn't matter if it's not centered around that person. And I think that's an appreciation of like knowing there is a human behind it all, right? Because if they can't use it, it can't be effective, then it doesn't work. Yep. So I think even what we've done, you know, with Hack Baltimore, but, you know, I think the real distinction of like what Fearless does really, really well is that human-centered design. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing that there's, you know, kind of an unspoken value right now that you're just educating a ton of people on as well.
Can I also just riff on something that you mentioned in your last comment, Delali? I think it's exciting for me because I remember when we started the Baltimore Angels, I was still running Blue Sky Factory, but there was like this, you know, the company was getting big, and so you get further and further connected from that raw entrepreneurial energy. You know, those precious startup days when the team was, you know, sub 10, maybe sub 20. You've taken a particular interest, as you just said, in incubating some companies within Fearless or sharing services within Fearless. Could you talk a little bit about that? What sort of the ideas behind that? How do you guys engage with them? Is it just, are you investing in them, or are they just sharing office space? Is the energy contagious? You know that.
Yeah, John, I'll let you actually start first. Then
it's all you, man. It's your baby. Come on, man.
No. John's being modest. So I steal all of the processes that John sets up for us internally and how we should like make things work. I just steal them and apply them in other places. So it's good hunting around. But Hutch was really created out of that sense. And so Hutch is what you talked about. It's a civic tech incubator. So we are growing more digital services firms. The work that we see across the country, federal, state, local, it's huge, right? The amount of work, it's more than we could ever do ourselves, and we don't want to. And so the pool of capable companies and firms within this space just needs to grow. And so we want to help in growing that. We also think that there's so many incubators and accelerators or startup studios that are focused on the product side, right? So growing product companies, and they want the 10X and, huge multiples, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But there is a gap, right? There is a gap for people that can get folks growing companies in the service-based economy, which I think is really big here within the East Coast, that we don't tap nearly as enough. And so Hutch was born out of that. How do we get companies into this space? And so we've got companies that are focusing on, Azure program management, companies that are focusing on data science and analytics. We've got companies that are focused on cloud computing and DevOps. We got digital talent pipeline companies. So Mastermind, Aaron, they're doing some awesome work around like training, offering free training to people around the globe, right? I can't tell you how many times we've been to a conference or an event and we're like, hey, we heard of Mastermind. We were taking Aaron's training online, right? And so he's been able to create a really cool model around how you do training and scale it to people with a connection, even pre-COVID. So now it's really, really growing. And just being on proximity is amazing. They have access to our space if they need to, but we do not provide them physical space. Of our year one cohort, which was 6 people, it's a 2-year program. 3 of the 6 have taken up office space in our building, and so they're growing on their own and doing some really amazing work.
That's awesome.
I want to piggyback on that and tie both Hack Baltimore and Hutch together, right? And the challenge that I have that I'm laying at the feet of all businesses in Baltimore, in nationwide, is the underlying tenet between those 2 initiatives is the idea of capacity building, right? So those ideas are just the implementation of this idea of how do you take and leverage the skills that an individual business has and apply it in a way that you get that 3-4 times multiplier and return on it, right? And so that's my challenge to other businesses. How are you building capacity in your environments, right? Incubators, how are you building capacity in your environment? Small business, large business, how are you doing that, right? And that's what I want to see happen. That's the vision that I see for Baltimore, more capacity building.
That's awesome. And again, I'm going to say it right here. Whenever any of those companies are ready to pitch, got open invitation to get in front of the angels for sure.
There you go. You guys hear that? Get ready.
Get ready.
Uncle Greg's got some money for you.
That's awesome. I mean, are you encouraging employees to, like, let's just say that they've got that idea, right? Like where they can kind of almost spin off and create their own, company and idea from that. And it would be awesome. I would say, like, if they spun off and then all of a sudden, like, they come back, right? And it's like now they become a partner to you, and or like you guys are collaborating. That's a great story.
Yeah. In fact, two of the first 6 are Fearless employees in that first cohort. And so of the 13, 2 of them are with Fearless. But yeah, we encourage that. We want
that's great. You're
to follow their passion.
The people who want grow a set of wings to fly, a lot of people are really, I commend you for doing that too. When you went into your first contracting job at that firm, you said, look, I want to be an entrepreneur,
Yep.
It's great to know what's driving people. And as you all both know, and all of us know on this webinar, everyone's motivated by different things, I'll never forget in the customer service world, when I was running a SaaS company, I couldn't stand dealing with the customer, especially as it was starting to scale, and it was just like, how would anybody want to do this all day? Until I met, the employee who went on to run and she's like, I love it. I love doing this all day. I said, why? She's helping people solve problems. Turns out that was it. She just loved helping people solve problems. Totally didn't like mind, it was like the more the merrier, except when it got really crazy. But again, people are motivated by different things. So to find that and to understand is key.
Yeah.
Is key.
So in terms of giving people advice, right now, and I think both of you, John, you being the COO, like I appreciate your role a ton too, right? Because like creating operations and also being the driver of the operations this moment in time, like I can only imagine the stuff that you're dealing with, and having 120 people that, are trying to make sure that you're, getting the help and they have all the tools necessary to do their job appropriately, and also like feeling like they're supported, by, both of you. I, commend you, right now. But I guess my question there, comes down to like, what is your advice and how you're kind of tackling these challenges right now? But, for those that are trying to incubate their ideas and trying to be entrepreneurs this moment in time, like what advice do you have for them in trying to stay positive? And I really key on that positivity message, right? Where it's like, we're all struggling, right now as just humans, but trying to help each other stay positive is important, especially for entrepreneurs that are carrying a load, but also the COOs and the others of the world, where it's like you're carrying a load too.
Yeah. For those people, just starting off, the entrepreneurs, I'm going to go and reference Simon Sinek. Start with why, right? Make sure you know your why, because there will be times when things will certainly not go your way. And you just have to, rely on that why. And that's something that Delali has taught me time and time again, is that, there are rocky times. There are times where, like, I can honestly say in any given day, I probably get punched in the stomach 3 or 4 times, right? That's just business.
I hurt my wrist.
That's great.
But just relying on why and the people that really need our services, right? And the employees and their families, right? Just honing in on that why, I think will keep you grounded long term. So, and if you don't have a person in your life, if you don't have that internally in yourself, you need to get it very quickly. So
that's awesome advice. Delali, what about you? I mean, don't punch John again, please.
Almost the exact same thing. I mean, I don't have anything out of that. Start with why. It's got to be, you got to be there. And once you understand that, you got to keep pushing, right? That drive and that tenacity and that fearlessness, and absolute pun intended, to just keep going is so important, right? You're going to have the highest of highs, and you just close a huge deal, or you're working somewhere, you just did something really well at work or at home, and you're going to have a high, and you're going to have lows. And so you've got to be able to appreciate and celebrate the highs, and reflect and learn from the lows. But you gotta be able to keep going through it all. And persistence is just such a big part.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think entrepreneurs know that. I mean, it's that the highest of the highs and lowest of the lows that can happen the same day as well, mm-hmm. right? And I think that's the thing, is that you just have to keep, rising above and pushing through and making sure it's there. The other part too, just as a question that goes with that, is how are you guys as a company talking to your, employees about kind of the transparency, right? So it's like, are you holding, town halls? Are you doing things where it's like, how do you bring people together at this moment to also make sure that they hear your voice and how you stay positive?
Yeah, I think a couple of different ways, right? So we do have family meetings every month, right? So we bring everybody together, and we're very directed on the topics that we want to cover, but it also gives people a space to voice their concerns in real time. We did a presentation yesterday. We were talking about where we are with our strategic and operational plans in the year, some changes that we're making. And it was a very open and appreciated dialogue from the company. They had very directed questions of us. And honestly, we did not hide in any of the answers to any of that, right? It's recorded. They can go back and see what we said. And we continue to dialogue on those things. And then I think the other thing that and I go back to, I'm such a proponent of capacity building, something that I've learned tremendously over the last year, right? So in the spaces where Delali and I can't always answer questions, right? Being very intentional in our operational plan to ensure that we are building capacity and other leaders in the company, right? They all have to carry the torch of fearless. They all have to be able to take the highs and the lows day in and day out, right? And if we're not teaching them to do so, we will not be able to scale and get to the outcomes that we want. So that's all we think.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. From a capacity building, I think we have both formal and informal ways to have open dialogue and conversations. More than maybe planned out, you don't just run into someone in the hallway, right? You can have like an informal dialogue, and so you got to be a little bit more intentional about it. But from the monthly family meetings that we have, John and I have a meet the CEO and COO meeting with every new person that starts. And so they have opportunity to kind of chat and ask any questions to us directly. Both of those happen once a month. We also have a space like Ask Me Anything space where people can come on, we jump on a Zoom over lunch, and anything you want. You want to ask what color, someone's, dog is, whatever, right? Who cares, right? Anything that they ask, personal or professional, we will answer in that setting. So we try to have some transparency there. We also have what we call herds, which are kind of how we bend our disciplines and in our practices here in Fearless. And so they have meetings within their herds. And so that's a space for them to kind of connect and ask questions and to have dialogue there. Then they have project teams, right? So they have their space in the project teams. And then when all else fails, we have 5 million Slack channels where lots of conversations are occurring both informally and formally.
What's your most fun Slack channel?
Oh God, I don't know. I'm a part of so many. I don't know if I have a favorite one. They all add a little something different to my life.
I mean, yeah, we're in the same boat. There's so many Slack channels, and I love some of them where it's just like it's sharing the, especially this moment in time, like sharing what you're feeling, how you're doing, but also I appreciate the ones that the people that can talk in GIFs a lot too, right? Where it's like all of the abilities to say like a whole dialogue only visually, right?
Yeah.
Those are fun ones too.
Hey, before we jump though, because I know we're bumping up against 2:00, can we just talk really briefly about the initiative that we are going to work on together? Hopefully, that you are so kind of Baltimore Tech.
That's right.
Sorts that we at Betamore, built the first version of it. Clearly, we stretched it to its limits a couple of years, maybe a year and a half ago. I don't know what it was. You were so kind to offer, $15,000 worth of coding and development time to re-engineer this thing for something more relevant and timely for today's world. Passed it back to us. We've been going through our own transitions, wasn't able to get it up and running for a variety of reasons, and we're just transferred the domain to you. And so why don't we talk about what your idea was when you reimagined it and what we could look forward to in the future, or actually everyone can look forward to in the future, because it really is a community-driven initiative.
Yeah, BaltimoreTech.org is such an important part of the story and the history here within Baltimore. I think Betamore did an amazing job kind of getting off the ground. But really, what it was and what it will be again is really just the entry point of technology. Like what is happening within our tech ecosystem. And we don't suffer from good things happening here, right? You don't suffer from the assets being here. We suffer from being able to connect them and collaborate, as efficiently as we could. So it becomes a really nice tool to be able to say, here's our asset. Did you know that there's a citywide Slack, right, for all the tech community, right? And that's free to everybody. You can jump in, right? Here's a link, get involved, right? Plug in. Here are all the meetups that are happening in town and when they're happening, and a real-time calendar that tracks all the meetups with very little to no effort from the people that organize the meetup. They can just update via meetup.com, and that information is sucked in automatically and aggregate on a master calendar for the community. And so we're really excited about putting that together. What are the organizations that are doing interesting things here within Baltimore? And so we're excited to get that back and running, coming to a home near you in short order, but just an important piece of our story here in Baltimore.
Can't wait. It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. And again, I'm super excited that we can get something out there that we all can collaborate on, but also it's going to be, pretty vital to everybody else. Yeah. So we're at 2:00. I want to thank both of you, just genuinely. We appreciate you beyond belief. I mean, you guys are some of the most humble leaders out there, and Baltimore very much needs more of you, more people like you, and we love that you're continuing to help multiply yourselves, right? Like you are growing a culture that we're going to see other leaders spawned from everything that you're doing in helping the community. So it's just one of those that I humbly I thank you. I appreciate you guys just very much.
But yeah. I cannot express how proud I am too. I mean, I just both of you guys just doing what you're doing, and I know how hard it is, and you've grown organization twice, 3 times the size of my own largest organization. So I commend you both for it, and doing it in a spirit, with a pure intention, with a clear vision, and making sure that you're sticking to that. and you're going with and you're starting, as John said, with the why and executing against it, which is just incredible. So thank you both, and congrats.
Thank you guys so much.
Agreed. Yeah, no, thank you. And thanks for everybody for joining. We'll wrap it up today, and we'll see you on the next Wednesday.
Great.